What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
What?
Smile, I say.
Smile.
Smile.
Here we
Welcome.
are.
There's
Welcome.
people now. You can't say anything you were talking about before. So
Okay.
No
Yeah.
more four-letter words from you, gentlemen.
You need to give us more warning, Richard, when you turn that thing on. Welcome, everybody.
What else could I say? I said, here we go. I'm going to hit the button. Let's go. We're starting now. Get your hair on.
The
How is
challenge
everyone?
is-
On a
the
scale of
challenge-
9 to 10, how excited are you to be here, folks?
Put your
No, that's
dentures
not
in.
the question.
That's not the
No.
question. Jeff has the question.
So the question is, in 10 words or less, in the chat box, put your job title. For real.
Oh, I thought you said job description, not job title.
Oh, I'm sorry, job description, not job title.
Yeah, Connie is a 10 today.
See, I knew what they were going to answer your question, Mike.
Mm.
Very
Yeah.
excited to be here. We're all excited to be here.
10 words or less.
Yeah,
It's yeah.
we are
And a
excited.
reminder, if you haven't, change to make sure you are sending your text to everyone and not just the panelists.
Oh, see, I just messed that up.
You just messed that up, Sanjay.
Entering
That's why I thought
others,
of it.
mind reader,
Oh, mind reader.
and finance
Yeah.
administrator in a regional library system in Minnesota. I love that. FM catalyst and problem solver. FM. I know I should know what that is for.
Facilities
Frequency
management.
modulation.
Facilities management, I bet.
Lounger. I like Carol's job the best.
Lounger.
All right, guys, it's time.
What about lounge singer?
I told you it's facility management. Thank you.
win.
Brian.
You win, Jeff. You win. Well done, you. Well done, you. Well, are we
Mike, go
starting?
ahead. Start us off.
Start us off. Who's starting us off? Hey, do we
You
have
are.
the music, Richard?
No, we haven't had
It's
music.
not to play the music anymore. People are clamoring for the music, but
They're clamoring. I'm getting messages left and right about the music.
yeah, I am too. We'll do it next time. I do not have it queued up, so we could all of us sing it, right? No, wrong. Okay, never mind.
Wrong. No. Okay. I'm diving right in. Hey, welcome everybody. It's another Every Other Wednesday. In fact, this is the Every Other Wednesday. It just happens to be today, October 18th, 2023. It is official, amongst other theme days. Happy Chocolate Cupcake Day. My name is Michael Kerr, coming to you from Canmore, Alberta, in the spectacular Canadian Rockies. And let's go over to the lovely and talented Richard Haddon.
Hello, I'm Richard Haddon, and I'm coming to you from the spectacular Jacksonville, Florida today, and it is rather spectacular today. Today is like a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 on the weather gauge. But I am an author and a speaker, and I'm known for the Contented Cows Leadership book series, and I'm just delighted that all four of us are here. Carol mentioned that, all four of us all in one place at one time.
In person. It's not pre-recorded.
It's not pre-recorded. Today is actually October the 18th at 1:02 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. All right, who's next? Jeff.
Oh, me. Okay. Did you read Bob's note? Your sign, Michael, always makes me feel like a patient in a memory unit.
That's awesome.
I love
that. Is its intended purpose. So thank you.
Yeah, we can say, do you know what today is? What is today's month? Do you know who the president is? Like they ask.
Yeah.
And then we could also say, do you know who the Speaker of the House of Representatives is? Oh, that would get that
Rob
right.
Rob Morris missed the sign. Could you hold it up again, please, as I introduce myself? Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Jeff Toe. I'm coming to you from not a 10 Pittsburgh. We are probably around a 6 or 5 if we're referring to weather. Otherwise, it's a 10. I am a speaker, author, trainer, all in the area of customer experience and employee engagement. And I'm so excited that we're all here live and in person. Sanjay.
Yes, that means 4 times the insults. So we're really excited about that. From weather perspective, here based in Toronto, it's probably an 8 or a 9. It's a little on the cool side, but bright and sunny. It is probably 15 degrees, which makes it what, about 60 degrees Fahrenheit?
It's Toronto, Sanjay. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's Toronto.
No, I'm not talking about hockey. I'm talking about the weather. People care about the weather. They just don't care.
In Toronto, no.
My name is Sanjay Nath, and I am a speaker and author. I focus on leadership and performance, known by a concept and brand and a framework called the 10 80-10 principle. And like these other Yahoos, I'm excited that we are all together. You know, when we first started doing this during COVID, we were always here. And we had actually had a joke about who would be the first to break their perfect attendance record and be away. I believe it was Richard, yes. And now it's rare that that all four of us can meet on a Wednesday. So it's perfect that we're all unemployed today. Woot woot, bring it on.
Okay.
Thanks, Sanjay. Hey, so today we are going to talk about all things job description, job crafting. We're going to talk about how job descriptions relate to workplace culture, how they should reflect workplace culture, what you should think about if you're a manager, what you could also do perhaps if you're an employee to think about and not just your job description, but your job in general, how perhaps you could craft your job in such a way to make it more interesting for you or to create a greater sense of purpose and meaning in your job. Does that encapsulate what we are talking about, gentlemen, today?
I think it does. You know, so often we talk about the general kind of global culture in an organization, and that's still part of today's discussion, but we want to focus more on the actual work, the content of the work that people do.
Can I kick things off? Can I kick things off? Because I actually went to ChatGPT and I put in, please write a job description for a moderately good a keynote speaker. Please reference Michael Kerr and the topic of humor in the workplace.
You did not.
And what did it say?
I'm looking at it right now.
No, seriously?
Seriously. The best part is the qualifications.
Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
No. It did not take the part about moderately good to heart. It does say being familiar with the work of renowned humor expert Michael Kerr and the ability to incorporate his insights into presentations is highly desirable.
Well, I mean, that does bring up the topic that we are going to touch on, and that is artificial intelligence in creating and crafting not only job descriptions, but job content or job design, and how it works and kind of how it doesn't work. I, too, did a little experimenting with some AI today on job descriptions. And while we're talking about it, I'll just share. So I told it to write a job description, first of all, for a construction project manager. And as I read it, it may as well just say, wah, 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 because it's really boring. And then it gets to personal traits. Now listen to this. And this says, as you're generating it, it says, please wait while we generate your custom description. And for personal traits, it's looking for leadership, decision-making, problem-solving, organizational, and time management. So then I went to something completely different, and I asked it, it's the same engine, and I asked it to do a job description for a nurse manager. And as you read the description, it is word for word the same. It goes wah, 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 wah. And then when you get to personal traits, it says leadership, decision-making, problem-solving, organizational, and time management.
So what do you say, Richard? So what's your conclusion?
My conclusion is that I think AI can be helpful to kick things off and stimulate some thinking, but based on just this experiment with same engine, but two completely different jobs, it was so generic and so non-descriptive that I don't know that it would be useful to use as is.
So let's not go too far down the AI.
Right. Well, except just to make a point that I think, as with so many things that we can apply artificial intelligence to, it really requires, if it's going to be effective, a job description, you've got to put in the work. You've got to think it through. You've got to customize it, and you've got to make it meaningful to, and you've got to make it appeal to the people who are going to be looking at it.
Yeah. Let's back up here, though, a minute, folks, because when you said wah, 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 I immediately thought, oh, so it in fact was written by HR, because the number of boring, wah, 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 generic, blah, blah, blah job descriptions.
Now you've just insulted and alienated 90% of the audience.
Sorry, but it's the truth. They are just brutally bad. So can I just ask an opening question here? Do we even need job descriptions? What trends are you seeing, you gentlemen seeing out there in terms of job descriptions? Are they falling by the wayside, or are companies changing how they approach job descriptions?
Well, it depends too on the economic cycle. So right now, when jobs are harder to find, pardon me, jobs are easier to find, it's harder to hire. You want to make sure that that description is accurate to make sure you get the right person, because the cost of turnover is ridiculously high. But you also want to track the right person by fit. And so that's always been the big knock about AI is it's not human, right? It can give you the nuts and bolts. It can put out the buzzwords and communication and, and getting along and trust, and you do all that stuff, but it doesn't have the snazz. It doesn't have the attraction by being humorous or being clever or being emotional. And it's those emotional bits.
There's no hook to it. There's no hook to it. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be funny or entertaining, but it's got to have a hook.
Yeah, it's factually correct. And the nuts and bolts are there. And that's that's what's required. But the colors are wrong, right? There's no animation. It's not brought to life.
But wait, we talked in the green room, before we started the recording. Are we talking about a job description to advertise a position, or are we talking about job description so that somebody can do their job? Because I think they're two different things.
Now, speaking of the green room, I just want our audience to see we really do have a green room. There it is. Okay, but going back to our other,
looking a little green around the gills this morning, there, Richard.
Yeah.
Right.
No. Well, I think that's a really important question. As is, and I want to engage Rob on this because Rob has asked the question, what do you see as the fundamental need for or value of a job description? And I happen to know that Rob is a human resources professional. And so let's talk about Jeff's question first. Are we talking about a job description in order to attract somebody, or a job description that would be used functionally while they're doing their work?
Well, I think both. Both are really important. And Sanjay hit on this, right? You want to, if you're trying to recruit people, you want these to be sounding human, to be conversational, to speak to the heart and the mind, and to be a little creative and a little fun and a little edgy, because you want to match, you want to screen people out. And in fact, I'm a huge believer in this. I think companies should just trumpet on their website in the About Us section, or wherever they're hiring, here is what we are not looking for.
Right. Here's what we do not want.
Yeah, we do not want this, and this is what we do. And be brutally, to Sanjay's point, be brutally honest, because it doesn't do anyone any good if you're painting a rose-colored glasses view of what the job or the workplace is going to be like. That's not helpful. You got to be honest. In fact, I have this example. Now, it's not really a job description. Well, it kind of is. From Premier Courier out of Columbus, Ohio. We're interested in hiring a semi-obnoxious, pushy account representative for the very, very boring, repetitive job of selling our business. Applicants should have a skin like an alligator and the desire to suffer their way to earn what they're worth under our combination salary and compensation program. These folks got 10 times the response rate when they did this ad. And I think partly because it was brutally honest.
I would argue that is purely a job ad.
Yeah.
That's
really
it's more of not a job description. And sometimes you see job descriptions, you see job ads that are posing as job descriptions and vice versa. So my favorite one, and I use this sometimes when I'm presenting about recruiting, is one. This is for a certified nursing assistant, and I'll read part of it because the rest of it would put everyone to sleep. But it's just a bullet point list. It says full time, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, requires working every third weekend, maintain good personal interrelations, offers assistance activities for skilled patients, CNA certified. I mean, it's just deadly. The most fascinating, the most compelling thing in the entire job description is my favorite line, and it says collects urine specimens for the job end. I mean, that's the most exciting thing that's on this whole thing.
We just lost half our audience who went to apply. So.
Right, yeah. So yeah, are we going to use it to try to entice people or to try to manage their work while they're there? So Rob, if you can hear me, I'm going to turn the question around to you.
Can we unmute him if he's willing?
He might not be willing. We tried that once before. We did it by accident, and then we didn't do it. Rob, are you willing to speak to us, or would you prefer to go in the chat? Because I want to ask you, what do you as an HR professional see as the fundamental need for or value of a job description?
Well, Rob,
I can keep typing away. Oh, he says, sure. So
hold on, I'm going to try.
All right. So it says Rob Morris, raised hand, view. But I see. I don't think I can. Make him. Hang on. Sorry.
If he raises his,
we do know what we're doing.
Rob, raise your hand. If Rob raises his hand, I think it'll be easier.
Rob, raise your hand again, please.
You know, Rob's sitting at his desk going like this right now.
I know. No, he's raised it. He raised his hand.
He did. Oh, yeah, there he is.
I don't know how this used to work, but it doesn't anymore. Don't put me on accidentally. Okay. I'm not fully. Carol's not fully dressed.
None of us are from the waist down either.
Yeah, Rob, can you just chat with us, because I really value your input. What do you see as? Wait a minute. Hold on.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Definitely.
Hold on.
While you're fiddling with that,
yeah.
I want to say that the idea of a job description, so people can actually take on and do their role more effectively, obviously very helpful when people are brand new. But here's what I think is really important. The more dynamic an organization is, the more malleable they are too. So you may bring in someone and their job consists of these 7 parts, but they realize that 2 of them they suck at. And not only do they suck at it, they don't want to learn how to do it. Because sometimes if someone's not good, they can learn and become really, really good. But if there is, you need to change the job because my buddy in the cubicle next to me, Mike Kerr, is really good at those 2 things I suck at, and he loves them. We need to be open enough to be able to say, okay, maybe this no longer falls under your job description, because every individual is unique. Again, what we're trying to do here is massage fit more so than, rule with an iron fist and say, this is how it is and this is how you do it. The bigger question is, what's best for the organization? What's best for the customers? What's best for the employees? What's best for the bosses? What's best for everyone? And so sometimes that requires us to be flexible.
Right. Well, and Sanjay, on that point too, what you're speaking to as well is the fact that we need they need to evolve over time, probably, right? They have to be a living, I hate that phrase, living document, but they have to be a living document that we perhaps go back to, and we incorporate things about the culture and the values. And one of my beefs about job descriptions or concerns about them is that they can be limiting, right? They can be constraining, and they don't leave room for expansive possibilities or greater creativity or innovation in somebody's job. We put people into these little boxes and contain them. And in fact, they then lead to one of those most annoying of all phrases: it's not in my job description.
See, that's the trouble that I have with them, because I think they can be, and this word is being overused these days too, but it can be weaponized. The job description can be used as a weapon to say, no, I don't have to do that. I don't need to do that. That's not what I'm supposed to do. You don't pay me enough to do that. All of those things. So Rob did answer our question, which I appreciate. And he says, I see the job description as being instrumental in helping employees navigate day-to-day expectations once hired. The bulletin or ad is the tool I use to initiate interest. And then he goes on to say, it's tricky in that some people want highly prescriptive guides while others thrive on very generic. But this is the best line in the chat so far, and that is, but ultimately it should help drive performance. Right? Yeah, I mean, I think that's the bottom line. So I made a list.
Drive performance, and we're all about the culture here. So I would add just and support your culture.
Performance does drive culture.
Well,
right?
Yeah, but I think it's bigger than that. It's not just that. No. You need to define performance in the context.
So Rob added in culture, so we're good.
Yeah, I think you for example, I've seen job descriptions where they put a lot of emphasis, and they're big, like they're long, but they're very conversational. They're very engaging, but they talk about things like, we expect you in this job to hear our values. Again, as a reminder, we expect you to live these out loud and hear what that looks like. We expect you in your role to contribute to our culture in a positive way. So we're going to assess you not just on the work you do, but on how well you contribute to an environment that other people want to show up on a Monday morning.
I mean, wouldn't you guys agree that most organizations, and I've seen the shift to more data-directed, data-focused, And with that shift, I think what happens is performance reviews are a great example that they need a benchmark. I mean, it's more CYA than data, right? And now if I have a job description at the beginning, it's almost a checklist of how are you doing in these areas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a good example of one that like what you were talking about, Sanjay and Mike. And this is from Canva. If you're, the app for the creativity design app. And
Richard, have you been looking for a job? Is that why you have all these?
No.
You'd be a great nurse manager. Come on.
No, I haven't had a job in 30-something years. I wouldn't. But this is from Canva. This is from Canva in Australia. And it starts out saying, hey, g'day, ma buhay, kia ora, and all of these different languages saying hello. Thanks for stopping by. We know job hunting can be a little time consuming and you're probably keen to find out what's on offer. So we'll just get straight to the point. And the first thing in it says where and how you can work. Our flagship campus is in Sydney. We also have a campus in Melbourne and co-working space in Brisbane, Perth, and Adelaide. But you have choice in where and how you work. That means if you want to do your thing in your office, if you're near one, or at home, or a bit of both, it's up to you. What you'd be doing in this role at Canva scale. So it's very, as you said, conversational, and I think speaks to pretty well to their audience. Now, when that person gets that job, that particular document, living or not, is not going to be very helpful in guiding their day-to-day kind of procedures. So I mean, I made a list, which I will not bore you with the entirety of, but I made a list of some pros and cons of job descriptions. Would you like to explore these?
This is very exciting. You brought a list.
Yeah, I made a list.
I want to hear your list.
Okay, so in terms of the pros, I mean, it tells the person what they need to do, right? It also helps to attract the right people. It answers questions later on. So as you get into, again, it has something to do with how you approach it. If you're approaching it in a legalistic, this is going to limit me to what I don't have to do and I can still get paid. That's a different way of looking at it than saying, is this something that's going to be used to help drive performance and help me to be effective in my role? But it can answer questions later on. I think another good reason to have something like a job description is it helps keep people in their own lanes. So there's not a lot of overlap and interfering and so forth. I think it can also be helpful in helping managers to focus on job design rather than just being something super generic. So that's part of the pros of it. Some of the cons, as we've said, it can be used as a weapon. So people could say, well, it's not in my job description, so I don't have to do that. They can often be too vague. They can often be the opposite. They can be too restrictive. And then there's this line that we see in so many job descriptions that it says other duties as assigned.
Other miscellaneous duties.
CYA.
I think when you do that, you invalidate all the rest of it. And, they can be boring. They can use too much jargon. And as we've said a minute ago, they don't evolve with the job.
Yeah. That line could just be replaced with the word but, and everything else is negated, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things here is it's this notion of values versus rules. And when people, depending on their personality, when they see a job description, they want the rules. They want it black and white. This, not this. This hour, not this hour. This is where the threshold is. Beyond that, it's not. And the reality is all this stuff is very gray. And so what we want to be articulating more is the values of the position, what the expectations are, and not I can't say it another way other than the black and white, the right and wrongness of it. So although it's annoying, other duties as required, that's more of a value. It's like the high value is create, move the organization forward, help your peers and help your customers, and let's move everything forward. That's the high level of what we're trying to do. You might be doing it by delivering a product, and I might be doing it by working on the assembly line, and someone else might be doing it by pushing paper. But the commonality again is what's the high level value, not to every possible contingency of trying to write out every rule, because then you're changing this value by a new rule changes, the interest rates change, technology changes, and all of a sudden we have to revamp the job descriptions constantly. And that's not productive either. So you have to kind of walk this line of, yeah, some generic junk and some specific stuff, knowing that it's never going to be an exact document and it is going to be live.
You know, Dan says it. Dan says it so well, and what I was trying to say before about CYA, he says it far more eloquently. And are they covering that? You know, they're just checking boxes sometimes to protect themselves from litigation. Absolutely, especially here in the States. I don't know if it's different in Canada, but I think that, you know, they've gotten so far, depending on the size of the organization, that they're getting legal advice from their legal department before they're putting a job description out there, because it's so contentious nowadays on what they write and actually put out to the public. So yeah.
One area where I think that this comes in is, and this is especially in the United States, I don't know if it applies in Canada, but that is sometimes the job description can be used to justify someone's exempt status. And of course, that makes a big deal in terms of how they're paid and all kinds of things, whether they're exempt or non-exempt. And sometimes the job description can be used to justify that. I want to address something that Sarah said here about Zoom webinar. Thank you, Sarah, for posting that up here. And that's interesting to see. The source of our conversation a minute ago came from about 3 months ago. We had a participant who said something and I clicked and suddenly she appeared. She really did. And it was great. And she contributed a lot. And so I thought maybe that was a feature that had been added. I suspect, based on what we see and what you've just now written in here, that somebody at Zoom goofed and accidentally that was enabled for a little while and they found out about it and they disabled it. So thank you for clearing that up for us.
And we can't just, you know, we can't just open it to everybody and put everybody, you know, to use their cameras, because then Carol wouldn't come if she's only half dressed. So
that would not be worth.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Rob. That's well said, right?
Right.
Speaking to the
it's only well said because he
expectations
said,
and-
"I agree with Sanjay." That's what's well said about
That's the
it.
best part of it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this with culture, because how do you think, I mean, let me just throw something out here. Do you think that an organization's culture, whatever it may be, does it help define what a job description is likely to be like in that organization?
Absolutely.
Oh, for
And it
sure.
should-
100%.
It should include their values. It should include something about the culture. If I were looking for a
But
job,
what
I
if it
want
doesn't?
to
I'm
know.
just saying, yeah, I agree. I think it should. Really good ones do, especially ones that want to attract you. But let's assume for a minute that it doesn't actually address specifically. Could I look at a job description and infer something about that organization's culture simply by reading the job description? What do you think?
For sure. Absolutely. Job descriptions should reflect the culture and also help build the culture that you want, the desired culture.
Zappos, remember Zappos still around? And but they were purchased by Amazon and it changed their whole culture. But the bottom line was that their job descriptions used to be fun. And it absolutely was serious. It told what you should do. And then it had things like, you know, it must be a fun person, you know, must have fun at work.
Well, here's one from
changed, Jeff.
Sorry?
Do you know for a fact that that has changed now that they've been acquired by Amazon?
If you check out their mission and values, it's now Amazon's.
Okay.
So
here's one. Tell me if this, now you can argue whether this is they kind of called it a job description, but really it's more of a job ad, but it's kind of walking those two lines. But does this not tell you something about the culture? This is from Woot. You're so bright, people mistake you for the Greek god Apollo. You're so adept at multitasking, you're reading this while juggling. You're so self-motivated, your application is half submitted, and you haven't even gotten to the requirements yet. You love details, you crush deadlines, and switch gears like Steve McQueen at Le Mans. Discreet like Bond, professional like Jobs, and with the kind of humor that means you understand why a job description and a job application should be fun to read. That's tells you a little bit about their culture, probably, right?
You have to explain to Sanjay who Steve McQueen is.
But let me throw maybe to Dan as well. But
there we go, Dan.
if when that person takes that job and there's something happening and it's in the heat of battle, is that job description, if that's what it is that going to help anything in any way? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. What do you think?
I wasn't even listening to you. Sorry.
Well, it may not ask some questions.
Story of my life.
Again, I think that's a great document for attracting people, for kind of filtering out people who do not see themselves as being described in that way. They're going to never apply for that.
It's a teaser, right? It's an appetizer.
Right. Yeah.
It's
But when we get to the job and somebody says, wait a minute, because another thing that's on my list of pros for job descriptions that I didn't mention was collectively, all the job descriptions in your organization should collectively describe everything that needs to be done in the organization. And what if no job description mentions some core task that needs to be done and it's not getting done? Right. And so that's why I say, as things evolve, if questions come up later, you might say, whose responsibility is this? And it's not, depending on your culture, if it's the kind of culture that I would want to be a part of, it's not, okay, who's responsible for this? As in, well, who should do this and who's in trouble if they didn't get done? But rather, I wonder who's best to fulfill this role. Let's think about getting it done, because we don't want everybody piling on doing the job, but we want to make sure it gets done.
Yeah.
I think we all, and I'm including Sanjay in all seriousness, I think we've all worked for a large organization way back when. Sanjay, now with you, your connection with FedEx, I'm curious because I don't ever remember getting a job description back then. So,
well, I did. Yeah, the only large corporation I ever worked for was AT&T.
Okay.
And I had two very, very different jobs there. And it was very much bullet point, this, and that. And it was, very structured and very limiting. And I had, I don't think they ever said it to me, but I can remember my supervisor saying to somebody else I worked with, that's in your job description. You have to do that.
Right.
So I will say this, though, with regards to the FedEx piece, for those who don't know, I bought 7 franchises, and the ones that I bought, they weren't running that well. So the bit of a toxic environment, trucks were falling apart, that sort of thing. So I actually had to get rid of about half the staff and bring in some new ones. But the ones that I did bring back and I rehired, I actually went and did a detailed job description, because there was a lot of stuff when I was kind of doing my due diligence and on the road and meeting some of these guys, there was a lot of huffing and puffing, and I don't want to do that, and that's not my description. And so I think there is a time to be a bit more authoritative and kind of saying, yeah, actually, it is your job. One guy said, well, I'm not responsible for picking up items, just dropping them, delivering. And it's like, no, actually, you're responsible for doing that. And so sometimes you do need to lay it out. Now, again, can you put in, to Rob's point, put in picking up the trash? No, because no one's going to read that document. Right. But the core of what needs to be there needs to be there. And keep in mind too, the best way to attract people isn't through a flashy job. Actually, I'm going to say 2 things. One is, if you have that beautiful, like the ad you just read, Mike, the job ad, sounds great. Imagine you apply to that thing and you sit down and there's a panel of 4 people and no one cracks a smile and they just stare at you and it's socially awkward, and they just drill you with, questions that don't seem relevant, and they're just checking off the boxes. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, it should be reflective of who the organization is overall. And which was the question is, does it reflect the culture? Hopefully it does. And depending on how large your organization is, someone who's writing that ad might be really creative, but the rest of the organization might be very stringent. And so you want to make sure that if they are stringent and they don't want to change and they like what they're doing, make sure that ad is stringent too. So you're attracting it and picking the right people.
So I want to jump on something you said there, Sanjay, just as an interesting part of this discussion. You mentioned picking up the trash, right? Now imagine this scenario. Do we really need to? We've got 200 people in this company working for us. Do we need to, in every single one of their job descriptions, put, if you see some garbage in our parking lot or in our lobby, pick it up on your way to your job, right? Does that have to be a line in there, or is that a mentality, a cultural connection that we make in other ways, but we also somehow make that in their job descriptions, that, look, if you need something that reflects on us,
put it in there.
You need to do it. You need to pick up the garbage.
Well, one of the first definitions when we started this podcast thing, one of the first definitions we gave for organizational culture is what are the unwritten rules?
Yeah.
And it's one thing to put it in there and get people to chant the vision. It's another that the more senior people walk by to pick up the trash and the junior people see it and they go, oh, that's how we do it here? Great, I'm in. And so I don't think you need to necessarily put every line in the book. I think you need to have the senior respected, leaders, formal or informal, act in a way that you want the rest of the group to act. And then you reward or acknowledge those behaviors and more people are going to follow.
I once heard a brilliant speaker on employee engagement who talked about discretionary effort and oomph. Wrong way on my screen, but anyway, seriously, and Richard, this is what you talk about, right? You can't put that in a job description. It's going beyond your job description. That's when people are engaged. So I think we're getting too much into the weeds that here's your job description. And it's almost like adding that paragraph at the end and other whatever discretionary.
So, look at what Carol said. I think that's exactly it. We're looking for the kind of person who would do that anyway.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, rather than putting in there. So, I mean, if I were applying for a job, if it were not in terms of health and safety or sanitation facilities, and I saw something that said I was supposed to pick up the trash, I would say, oh man, this is not the place for me. And yet I'd be the first one to pick up the trash, but I'm not interested in something that is so prescriptive.
So let's broaden this out beyond job descriptions in our remaining time, maybe, shall we, if we have time, to talk about just the whole connection to how we craft our jobs, whether that ends up in our official job description or not. Maybe it's just more of a conversation with our boss about our roles, about expanding our duties. There's this whole, and we talked about this, I know, in the episode where we talked about the importance of purpose in culture. And Amy Resnesky, this Yale professor who researches the importance of meaning and purpose in our jobs and how engaging and motivating that is for people, it's so important. And she talks about how in every walk of life, every profession, people spread out across the spectrum, depending on how they view their jobs. And so if we want to support our employees better as managers, I think we can think about this idea that she talks about of job crafting, where we craft their duties in such a way to engage them to a greater sense of purpose. But conversely, if you're a frontline employee thinking about what does give you a greater sense of purpose and meaning in your jobs, and is there a way to have that conversation with your boss to say, I'd like to do some of this other stuff as part of my job, because this is where I get a really great sense of meaning.
And you're talking about doing that really on an individual basis, aren't you? For individual.
Okay. Yeah. It's the old. There's a book, I believe, by the title. It says, be so good that you can't be ignored. And so I think you have to earn your right to craft beyond a certain scope. So you tweak your job as you go along, but if you want to make a big change, you've got to demonstrate your value and show how you are a team player, and you go beyond, and then you kind of go, hey, you know what? Here's where I really think I can serve the team best. I know this is my responsibility, but I only do this as a 7 out of 10, but this stuff here I do as a 9 out of 10. How do I get less of this and more of this? Because there are people who like doing this piece of the job, and we can carve that off to them and everyone wins.
And sometimes, Sanjay, right, it's a matter of discovering hidden talents in our employees, and maybe even from themselves that they didn't know they have. And you go, oh wow, like you really rock at this. We should maybe think about shifting your job a little bit to take advantage of your talents here.
Yeah, I think it's a living, breathing document, and shouldn't be so rigid that it can't change as the employee grows in their job.
Hey, so my favorite example from Amy Resnesky's research, and she talks about how you can craft your job in terms of the tasks, in terms of the relational aspect, and just cognitive as well, in terms of how you just think about your job. So one of my favorite studies that I talk about all the time, Midwestern hospitals in the States, cleaners in the hospitals, and how, as with all our other research, they spread across the spectrum. So on one end of the spectrum, when the cleaning staff are asked about their jobs, they answer things like, my job is incredibly boring, anybody could do it. And then they rattle off their job description, reading the bullet points. Here's what I have to do. Not terribly
clean that, scrub that.
Yeah, not terribly engaged at that end of the scale. Other end of the scale. Now think about this. Same hospital, same culture, same level of pay, same duties. Yet these folks at the other end of the scale, they're saying things like, oh, well, cleanliness in a hospital is incredibly important. I take my job seriously because people die, people get sick. We don't do our jobs properly. And you know what I love about my job is connecting with some of the long-term patients here. There's a patient down the hallway here who's bedridden. So whenever I get a chance, I change the artwork around in his room so he has a different view. Totally same job, totally different mindset about the role of that job, the purpose of that job. And as managers, we need to think about making that connection, I think, a lot better.
Yeah, I love how Rob tied that in, you know.
Yeah.
The NSA janitor, he says, I'm working to send people to the moon. So again, it's tied into the mission, vision.
By the way, if you're trying to discover in your job something that you're like, you know, where are my strengths? There's an allusion there to
Strength finders.
I find that a good question to ask yourself is, what drives you nuts? Because the things that drive you nuts is a pathway to some of your greatest strengths. So for Carol, for example, if she was driving her nuts, people are using its instead of its, or they're not using the apostrophe, or they are. It just shows that it's a strength of hers because she just assumes everyone else has that skill.
But I think what in Carol's example, I think that, and I could be reading more into it than there is, Carol, but I think for what I can take from that, it shows something in leadership, that leadership was open, was attentive, was tuned into what else can Carol do besides what's on her regular job description. Oh, we see that she has an eye for detail. Well, we need somebody with an eye for detail. So now we're going to make that a part of her job. And I think as leaders, we need to be on the lookout and not just be with blinders on, looking at what we've always looked at.
Agreed, but I'm saying it's a two-way street. If the leadership doesn't take on that role, then it's for you to do. For you to say.
And speaking of two-way street, Rob brought that up too. How it has to be a two-way street, and I love that. Yeah, the interview questions have to be tied into it, of course, and making sure it's a conversation in terms of the job interview, in terms of even crafting the job description. It should be a two-way conversation.
It's truly a fit assessment. Just like, you know, the employer doesn't like if you're lying about your experience and what you can do. On the flip side, if you're going in for an interview, you don't want the corporation to lie to you. Oh yeah, you get 17 weeks of vacation and you work 3 hours a week. And then you go in there and it ends up 17 minutes of vacation and you're working 80 hours a week. You know, you want to be honest, upfront, get as much information, give as much information to assess the fit. Because
because otherwise you're going to have that early turnover problem, which is particularly costly. Somebody gets in.
I think Sanjay would agree. You can't promise a kumbaya kind of workplace and then not deliver on that.
Green room talk.
I have to take a drink.
That's right.
We're laughing. Do we want to tell them why we're laughing?
Oh, because we were teasing Sanjay about how often he likes to use the word kumbaya.
Apparently I do.
It's a song, yeah.
I've been banned from saying it.
No, we're going to turn it into a drinking game.
That's great.
Hey, we have 3 minutes left. How do we want to? Yeah, Carol says, boy, the time went by fast. It always does.
That's right. Even for us as well. So we're hoping it goes by fast for all of you.
Have we concluded anything?
Do we ever?
To summarize some of it is there are job ads that are used to advertise and entice and get people involved. And then there are job descriptions that help to provide a track and some structure once we get going on the job. We shouldn't use jobs as a CYA, kind of a legalistic thing. In some cases, we have to, because we do have to tick some boxes. I would think certain government and other things might be subject to different rules than others. But we've shown some examples of some interesting job descriptions that I think would get people interested. And also that it really does have to not only reflect the culture, but I think it has to transmit the culture of an organization.
Yeah.
Well said. Totally.
Well, listen to this transition. So and I completely lost my train of thought. I'd be so smart, Alan. Sorry, Richard.
Okay.
So
You're going to talk about what happens in 2 weeks?
Yes, my transition was going to be that we have a guest coming in 2 weeks. I can't remember how I was going to tie it in, but I'm very excited.
November. Oh my Lord.
I know. I can't believe
November is already
the 1st.
And Sanjay probably will grow facial hair, right? Because it's November.
That's right.
Oh, yes. I grow facial hair every day, actually.
You could grow facial hair by this afternoon easily, yeah.
Okay, guys. So I'm so excited because we are having a return guest, which we don't do often. And I know what my train of thought was. I was thinking guest, and then I was thinking Rob Morris. we would love to have you as a guest and pick your brain formally. So, but our guest in 2 weeks, our return guest host is none other than Joe Mull. People might remember Joe. He wrote a book called Boss Better. We had him on about leadership and leadership as it relates to culture. You can always go back and watch past episodes on our website, eowednesday.com, or our YouTube channel. But Joe has written a new book, and it's really a good book. I actually read it.
It is called.
Sorry?
The title of the book is.
I'm getting there. Give me a second. Holy cow. The book is called Employalty. He made up a word, employalty. And I think the tagline is how to ignite commitment and keep top talent in the new age of work. How to ignite commitment, keep the top talent in the new age of work. Excited to have Joe here. Guys, I'm excited. When is that going to be? When do we meet?
November 1st. And
Every other
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
The best thing about November is it's my eldest son's birthday and Michael Kerr's birthday.
It is.
Right.
That's true.
November 6th.
Well, not November 1st.
That's
right.
it. No,
And
November 6th.
So please bring your gifts for Mike next time. You can drive him over to his house and
I can put my mailing address in the chat box. Here, if that's
Exactly.
helpful.
Richard, I always ask you, it's a new tradition. When do we meet?
Every other Wednesday.
Bye, everyone.
See you then. Bye.
See you in 2 weeks.